A little 3-year-old girl walked into the most expensive party in the city wearing a dress that cost maybe $5. The moment she stepped through those golden doors, a woman in a $30,000 gown looked down at her and laughed, loudly, in front of everyone. She pointed at that tiny child and said the cruelest words you could say about a baby who couldn't even fully understand them yet. But what happened next? What that billionaire did when he heard those words? Nobody in that ballroom was prepared for it. Not the guests, not the staff, not even the little girl's mother, who stood just a few feet away, frozen, trying not to cry. This story will stay with you for a long time. I promise you that. Welcome to Hidden Heart Stories, the place where real emotional stories touch your heart, shake your soul, and remind you what truly matters in this life. Before we dive in, I want to ask you something. Where in the world are you watching from right now? Drop your city or country in the comments. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now settle in, because this one is going to take you somewhere. His name was Daniel Mercer, 32 years old. A self-made billionaire from Chicago who had built his real estate empire from almost nothing. His father had been a construction worker. His mother had cleaned offices at night while he studied by lamplight. Daniel never forgot where he came from. He carried it with him every single day, quietly, like a stone in his chest that kept him grounded no matter how high he climbed. By 30, he owned properties across 12 states. By 32, he had appeared on the covers of 3 major business magazines, known not just for his wealth, but for his character. He was the kind of man who remembered the names of every person who worked for him. The janitors, the security guards, the kitchen staff. He knew them all, and they knew him as someone who treated people like people, not furniture. But in matters of the heart, Daniel had always been a little slower, a little more careful. That changed when he met Victoria Langston at a charity gala 2 years ago. Victoria was 29, stunning in every way the world tends to notice first. She had grown up wealthy, the daughter of a prominent Boston family, and she moved through life with the effortless confidence that comes from never being told no. She was sharp, witty, charming. She knew exactly what to say to the right people at the right time. Daniel was swept up in her energy quickly. Too quickly, perhaps. They had been engaged for 6 months. The wedding was planned for spring, and tonight, held at Daniel's Chicago penthouse, was their official engagement celebration. 200 guests, live jazz, crystal chandeliers, champagne that cost more per bottle than most people spend on groceries in a month. And somewhere in that grand, glittering world, there was Maria. Maria Reyes was 41 years old. She had worked as Daniel's housekeeper for 7 years. Quiet, diligent, deeply loyal. She arrived before sunrise and left after sunset. She kept that penthouse running like a well-oiled clock, and Daniel trusted her completely. He had watched her work through her hardest years without complaint, including the painful period after her husband passed away, leaving her to raise their daughter alone. That daughter was Sophia, 3 years old, big brown eyes, 2 little pigtails, a laugh that could light up any room she walked into. Maria had not planned to bring Sophia tonight. She had arranged for a neighbor to watch her, but the neighbor called sick at the last minute. And Maria, caught between not wanting to leave her daughter alone and not wanting to let Daniel down on such an important evening, quietly brought Sophia with her, kept her in the back kitchen, hoped no one would notice. Sophia, being 3 years old, had other ideas. Somewhere between 7 and 8 in the evening, while Maria was in the linen room, Sophia wandered out of the kitchen. She toddled right to the edge of the main ballroom, eyes wide with wonder at all the lights and music and beautiful people. She was wearing her little second-hand dress, pale yellow, small white flowers, slightly faded from washing, bought from a thrift store for $4.99. She stood at the entrance of that glittering ballroom, staring up at the chandelier above her head, mouth slightly open, eyes full of light. She looked like a tiny human who had just discovered magic for the very first time. To any person with a functioning heart, it was the most adorable thing in the room. But Victoria did not see adorable. Victoria saw out of place. She looked at Sophia the way someone looks at a stain on a white tablecloth. Her perfectly shaped eyebrow arched, her lips curled, and then, in a voice that was not exactly loud, but was absolutely not quiet either, she turned to her friends and said, "Look at her cheap clothes." She laughed lightly. Her friends looked uncertain, uncomfortable, but said nothing. Victoria continued, loud enough for the small cluster of nearby guests to hear. "Who let a maid's kid wander in here? This is a 200-guest event, not a daycare." The words hit the air and hung there. A few guests exchanged glances. A waiter passing by paused, almost imperceptibly. A woman near the dessert table pressed her lips together and looked away. Sophia, bless her heart, had no idea she was being talked about. She had spotted the dessert table from across the room and was now making her way toward it with great purpose and total innocence. But Maria heard. She had come out of the linen room and was crossing the hallway when she caught Victoria's words, clearly, every single one. She stopped walking. Her hand tightened around the folded napkin she was carrying. She did not cry. She had learned over years of quiet hard work how to keep her face still when something hurt. But her eyes said everything. She moved quickly and softly towards Sophia, scooped her daughter up before she could reach the dessert table, and murmured gently in her ear. Sophia giggled and reached up to touch her mother's earring, completely happy, completely unbothered. Maria held her daughter close, turned, and began walking back toward the kitchen. She thought that was the end of it. She thought she would swallow it, the way she had swallowed so many things over the years, and keep moving. She did not know that Daniel had been standing 12 feet away the entire time. He had been heading back from the bar toward the main gathering when he heard Victoria's voice. He stopped. He listened to every word, and then he watched Maria pick up her daughter and walk away, head down, and disappear through the kitchen door. Daniel stood very still for a long moment. His glass was in his hand. His jaw was tight. Then he turned and looked at Victoria. She hadn't seen him. She was still laughing softly with her friends, adjusting her bracelet, completely unbothered, and Daniel felt something shift inside him. Quiet, but enormous, like a door closing somewhere deep in his chest. He did not make a scene. That was not his way. He set his glass down on a passing waiter's tray and walked calmly toward the kitchen door. He pushed it open gently. Maria was inside, settling Sophia onto a small chair in the corner, handing her a bread roll from the staff tray to keep her busy. Sophia grabbed it with both hands and began gnawing on it happily. Maria looked up and saw Daniel. Her face immediately shifted. "Mr. Mercer, I'm so sorry." Her voice was low and quick. "My neighbor canceled last minute. I should have called, but I didn't want to bother you tonight of all nights. She was in the back the whole time. I don't know how she got out. I'll keep her here. It won't happen again." "Maria." His voice was soft. "Stop." She stopped. He looked at her for a moment. Then he looked at Sophia, who had breadcrumbs on her cheeks and was now examining the buttons on the chair with great scientific interest. Daniel pulled up a stool and sat down, in his tuxedo at his own engagement party, right there in the kitchen. And he asked her something she was not expecting. "How long have you been working here?" She blinked. 7 years, Mr. Mercer." 7 years, he repeated quietly. "And in 7 years, have I ever made you feel like you and your daughter were not welcome in this home?" Maria's eyes filled. She shook her head. "No, never." "Good," he said simply. He looked at Sophia again. The little girl had noticed Daniel now and was staring at him with the full, unfiltered curiosity that only 3-year-olds are capable of. "What's her name again?" "Sophia." Daniel smiled at the little girl. "Hi, Sophia." Sophia stared at him for a long and very serious moment. Then she held out her bread roll toward him, offering him a bite. The way a 3-year-old offers the most valuable thing she currently possesses to the person in front of her. Daniel's expression did something quiet and complicated. He leaned forward and pretended to take a small bite. "Thank you," he told her, very seriously. "That's the best thing I've eaten all night." Sophia giggled and pulled her bread roll back protectively. Daniel stood. He told Maria that Sophia could stay as long as she needed, that there was food for her in the staff kitchen, that Maria needed to stop apologizing. Then he walked back out into the ballroom. After the last guest left and the jazz band packed up and the catering staff quietly cleared the tables, Daniel asked Victoria to stay. They sat across from each other in the living room. The Chicago skyline glittered behind them through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Victoria had a glass of wine. Daniel had nothing. He sat with his elbows on his knees, hands folded, and told her, quietly and clearly, exactly what he had heard her say about Sophia. Victoria's face went through a complicated series of expressions. Surprise, a flash of something defensive, then a carefully arranged look of remorse. "Daniel, I didn't mean anything by it," she said smoothly. "It was just a passing comment. I was caught off guard seeing a child wandering around the party. She's not a random child," he said. "She's Maria's daughter, and Maria has worked in this home for 7 years." "I know who Maria is," Victoria said, a slight edge entering her voice. "But she shouldn't have brought her child to a formal engagement event without asking. That's a professional boundary issue." "She had an emergency. Her childcare fell through. Then she should have called and sorted it out." Daniel looked at her steadily. "Victoria, she's 3 years old. She was standing there looking at the chandelier, and your first instinct was to comment on her clothes and call her a maid's kid in front of other guests." Victoria set her wine glass down. "I think you're overreacting." And there it was. Not an apology. Not real remorse. Just a quiet, smooth redirect. A way of making him the problem, for being bothered by something she genuinely did not believe was worth being bothered about. Daniel sat with that for a long moment. He thought about his mother, cleaning office buildings at night so he could study. He thought about showing up to school sometimes in things that were slightly worn, slightly too small, and how some kids had noticed. He thought about what it means to be seen as less than, because of the clothes on your back. And he thought about a 3-year-old girl who would carry the memory of a woman pointing at her and laughing, even if she couldn't fully form that memory yet. Because those early experiences land in children somewhere deep, even when they cannot name them. "I'm not overreacting," he said finally. His voice was completely calm. "But I think we need to take some time before the wedding. I think we need to be honest with each other about some things." Victoria's composure cracked slightly. "What does that mean?" "It means," Daniel said slowly, "that I need to know I'm marrying someone who is good. Not just impressive, not just smart, actually good. And tonight made me unsure." The conversation that followed was long, painful, and honest in the way that truly important conversations often are. Daniel made no ultimatums. He threw no accusations. He simply told her how he felt, what he needed, and what he believed a life together required at its foundation. Victoria left that night shaken. In a way she had perhaps never been shaken before, because she had never encountered someone who had everything she wanted to gain, and was still willing to risk losing it over a principle. In the weeks that followed, they tried. They talked more. Victoria reflected. More than Daniel had expected her to. But somewhere in that reflection, something became undeniably clear to both of them. They were not the same kind of people at their core, not where it counted most. The engagement ended quietly, 3 weeks later, with mutual and painful honesty. Word traveled, the way word always does. Not in a press release, not loudly, but in the quiet currents that move through communities. People who had been at the party talked. Staff members talked to other staff members. A journalist who covered Chicago's business world heard a version of the story. Daniel declined to comment about his personal life, as he always did, but the story spread anyway, and the response surprised everyone. Within days, Daniel's company received hundreds of messages. Not about business, about Maria. People wrote to say they had been in situations like hers, that they had been laughed at for their clothes, their jobs, their children's appearance, that they wanted to know if Maria was okay, that her story reminded them of their own mothers, their own grandmothers, their own struggling years. Daniel read every message quietly. Then he called Maria into his office. She sat across from his desk looking careful and uncertain. Formal meetings were outside their usual easy routine. Daniel slid a folder across the desk to her. She opened it. Her face went very still. It was a full educational scholarship, researched and arranged by Daniel and his legal team. For Sophia, from preschool through college, a fully funded educational trust set up in Sophia's name. Whatever school she wanted, whatever path she chose, paid for. Maria looked up from the folder. Her eyes were full. "Mr. Mercer," she whispered. "Why?" Daniel leaned forward slightly. "Because Sophia looked at my chandelier like it was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen," he said. "And that kind of wonder deserves a great life." He paused. "And because you raised her right, she offered me her bread roll, Maria. She is 3 years old, and her first instinct was to share. That does not happen by accident. That comes from you." Maria pressed her hand over her mouth. The tears came then. Quietly. Completely. There was something else in the folder, too. A document showing that Maria's salary had been significantly increased, effective immediately, along with full health benefits for both her and Sophia. Benefits she had not had before. Daniel made no speech about it. He posted nothing. He called no journalists. It was simply done, because it was the right thing to do. And right things, he had always believed, do not require an audience. Several months later, Daniel was at a community fundraiser on the south side of Chicago. He had been quietly supporting youth education programs there for years. He was standing near the back, watching a group of children perform on a small stage, when he felt a tiny hand tap his. He looked down. Sophia was standing next to him, in a bright red dress, looking up at him with those enormous brown eyes. Maria stood a few feet behind, laughing softly at her daughter's boldness. Sophia reached into the small bag she was carrying and pulled out half a granola bar. Slightly squashed. She held it up to Daniel with complete seriousness. He crouched down to her level. "For me?" he asked. She nodded, very seriously. He took it. "Thank you," he said. And he meant it more than he had ever meant a thank you in his entire life. Maria stood behind them, hand over her heart, eyes bright. And Daniel thought, crouching there on the floor of a community center in his nice clothes, holding half a squashed granola bar from a 3-year-old in a red dress, this is wealth, not the penthouse, not the 12-state portfolio, not the magazine covers. This, being the kind of person that a child wants to feed from her own small supply. He had almost married someone who would have slowly pulled him away from being this person. And one little girl in a $4 yellow dress staring at a chandelier had somehow saved him from that future, without even knowing she did anything at all. The way you treat people who cannot give you anything in return. The children, the workers, the quiet people in the background of your life. That is the truest measure of your character. Not your wealth, not your wardrobe, not your connections. Your character lives in those small, unguarded moments when nobody important is watching. And sometimes the most powerful person in any room is not the one with the most money or the finest clothes. Sometimes it is a 3-year-old with a bread roll and a generous heart, reminding the whole world what it actually means to be rich. If this story moved you, please give it a like. It takes 1 second, and it means everything to this channel. If you are new here and you want more stories that touch your heart and remind you what matters, hit that subscribe button. You belong here at Hidden Heart Stories. And drop a comment below. What part of this story hit you the hardest? Was it what Victoria said? Was it Daniel sitting down in that kitchen? Or was it Sophia and her granola bar at the end? Share this with someone who needs to hear it today. Thank you for watching. Take care of each other out there.